When we think of the best Disney movie, we usually can point our fingers to The Lion King as the peak of cinema. It remains to be the highest grossing traditionally animated film of all time, and is celebrated for its story of a father and son relationship and the themes of the circle of life. Without it, you couldn't see Disney to the height it is because of its major impact, and it's all the better because of it. And as we all know here, Lion King has become such a massive franchise within Disney itself, talking in terms of where we are now and how they have made it a live action franchise too, if you can even call it as such. But other than that, it also has expanded into that direct-to-DVD era to actual decent success, with more sequel content stories that surround the actual original characters that feel aligned with the basis of being inspired by Shakespeare, where most people do equate the original film to be based on Hamlet in some form, and you can certainly see that, where the sequel of Simba's Pride is more based on Romeo and Juliet to an extent. The Lion King of course aren't adaptations of such works of Shakespeare, since it's more friendly to all audiences and are about lions and other animals in the African savannah, where it's just generally about the feelings that they come with. Where if you were to do the next film, you would think of another adaptation to base itself off on, one that is based on Shakespeare but actually not by Shakespeare. And what I mean by this has to relate with something that isn't even a sequel nor a prequel. Well, technically it kind of is from the beginning, but for the majority, it still isn't really. Where yes, I am talking about the famed Lion King 1.5 film that came out on DVD back in 2004. It's a film that focuses on Timon and Pumbaa's backstory before and during events of the actual Lion King film, that is also based on another play that was in turn based on two minor comedic characters from Hamlet, where just like that very play, it's mainly about having them involved in the original events of the Lion King, where the main characters you know are pushed to the side as minor characters while the sidekicks take center stage instead. Where growing up, this was actually my favorite Lion King film. In fact, my Lion King film itself, where I actively ignored the original movie so often, caring more about these two instead because I just loved it. Of course, the two of them previously had their own TV show spin-off that goes on their wacky adventures and whatnot, but this is the one that is just a film within a film, which I thought was just so genius. It's a rare type of movie too, considering we have focused on so many sequels, or sometimes have those prequels, where this is more classified as a sequel or a midquel if you can call it as such. And for the entire direct-to-DVD era, this was the perfect film for that DVD type, because many of the other films are mostly shallow product-based sequels dedicating their time to make a character have a love interest since they didn't have last film. This one is actually using the concept of the side adventure well, while placing it within the story that you already know, the characters you are familiar with. And it's not just that element that makes it wonderful on its own, it's also how they take it to another level, with it being revealed that Timon and Pumbaa are actually watching this film throughout. Like, we can see this fourth wall type in reality that they are actually watching it in a theater and are technically indirectly talking to us as they go about their own adventures, which is in fact inspired by another show called Mystery Science Theater 3000, a show that's premise is about a bunch of scientists trapping a dude to watch nothing but B-movies with the two robots he created, with their silhouettes appearing behind the scene as their commentary plays as we watch each of them. And this was an idea created by the co-director of the original Lion King, who consulted on the project to have them interact in this way for an idea based on Disney Animation's president at the time, where it all basically begins by them watching the Lion King as is, before they put their own commentary out to where Timon wants to fast forward to his very part of the film before Pumbaa wants to show us the entire full story, something described as a behind the scenes look of where they were and how this applies to that very play of going with a story within a story. In fact, they reel back from Pride Rock itself to start with Timon's backstory of his meerkat family. We see all of them dig tunnels and get introduced to his own mom and uncle. His mom is actually played by none other than Marge Simpson, who cares so deeply about his son wanting to lead a better life that he would fit in, which is the main theme of the movie itself, other than the retelling of the Lion King from their point of view, where it's more about the passion of what Timon was searching for in his life and how he meets Pumbaa to see that. Like, what's so bad about wanting a better life compared to those of where he lives in, because his family just wants to hide since they are a part of the food chain in that circle of life, where it twists Mufasa's lessons in the smaller creature era that are prey to the predators, but how Timon just won't take it and search for that paradise, which is indeed a bit selfish to his character that we know, but also very relatable in what he wants. You can connect to someone like Timon despite his comedic scaredy cat nature, because it's something that relates to any person's desire. Like, after he fails from watching the hyenas from his daydreaming of a better life, he just decides to leave them and search for the thing he wants. wants, rather than trying to fit in a place that nobody wants him there since he just messes everything up. This is where the other characters start entering the story as a connection to where he wants to go, just like Rafiki, who teaches his own lessons about looking beyond what he seeks, and the reason why they sang Hakuna Matata in the first place. Rafiki's lessons are more mentally than physically, but how Timon still takes that literally to where Pride Rock is, where looking beyond what you see is talking about what he feels inside, where the actual heart is that leads to where Pumbaa is and how they connect because people run away from them, or more in this case on the surface level view of Timon of just having a friend like him as the power to expel out foes from the mere meerkat. That their relationship started out as acquaintances since they had their own agendas, again more selfishly in the case of Timon than Rafiki was actually teaching him or what Pumbaa needs in somebody since he can't help but scare everyone around his smell. And this is where the events of The Lion King finally begin when they meet up, with the comedy being turned to 11 featuring the same scenes we knew but now included with their own involvement in such a film. Which is also still fun to talk about despite the same scenes, where they have to interject behind the scenes to what is happening, with actual funny scenes of like them switching the channels over to like those QVC channels before switching back to the main movie, that it takes itself in a more presence in real life and absolutely demolishes the fourth wall in every single way. Like you move back a few feet from the opening of how the animals gather together for the birth of Simba in the Circle of Life, and how these two are now technically responsible for such events of the film happening. Every animal that bowed was actually due to the fact that Pumbaa ripped a big fat nuclear blast before moving on to the next scene. Like it's just mainly about them trying to find the place that he was searching for, with them hanging out together and actually going through the events of The Lion King, like I Can't Wait to Be King playing the next day, going through Be Prepared in the elephant graveyard, and the stampede scene that eventually killed Mufasa. Like it's all about them traveling along point to point from where they met Simba in the first place. Like before that and traversing through the Lion King scenes is where they really have a heart-to-heart moment that showcases that they're more of the same, being alone and wanting to find a place that they can call home. And of course, they will find it together. A moment that also makes Timon in the present day sad because that's make him more emotional knowing the final meaning of what went throughout the events. Where we see the next day after that, they finally discover the waterfall helped them reach the lush paradise that they always wanted, where Rafiki's words actually meant something if you realize the events that took them to the certain place, but also not yet because he still needs to learn that personally, and how it also tries to make Timon realize the words that Rafiki was talking about all the time with the rhymes that Pumbaa makes about Hakuna Matata with their food and all the amenities they have, of course until he actually spells it out himself because he knew the entire time. And one of the best things that this movie does is how they turn scenes with a song that we are all familiar with into a sing-along karaoke. Like it's just them singing behind the screen, where it sets this great precedent of so many Disney releases later on of having their own sing-along versions of the film. I mean, I don't think that the films are inspired by this one film, but just including this element gives it a fantastic edge for what type of film that this is. It's all the elements rolled into one of who you are or what you're talking about, and I think that's something that deserves full credit for trying to do these things when you already know the base story, doing something that is worthy of having a direct-to-DVD sequel in any shape or form. Like this is the one that's it, and it's the best, and alongside others that are actual competent sequels, of course. At the same time, Mala tries to go out to look for Timon and see what Rafiki means by chasing down metaphors like he said earlier, or look beyond what he seeks. Something more akin to a wild goose chase as it would appear in her mind, where she actively seeks out her son. Where this is the part where they finally meet up with Simba after everything else that happened, and the movie speeds up events to the period of what they were doing when they became his parents, raising him in the jungle. All the antics that ensue with that, where it basically consists of Timon suffering and dealing with a lion cub as he grows up, where we get to see the point of where Simba was a teenager too, finally culminating in learning all these lessons that they taught him with eating grubs or what else in the snail eating contest that Simba wins, where this scene is more of admittance that he's growing up, changing into the lion that we all know and love before he gets back to Pride Rock, where we do realize that Simba grew up to actually have a good life with them, even though it's more laxed in a place that hyenas and Scar couldn't reach or know exist, where of course he remains to be comfortable in his current state as the mature lion we know him as, until the movie once again intersects with the actual original the moment that Nala met with Simba for the first time in a long time, where we learn that during the events of Can You Feel the Love Tonight, Timon was intentionally trying to sabotage their relationship because he cares about Simba and didn't want him to leave him until he gave up and let him go as is, until of course they saw the argument that they had about his family along the lines of the original as he runs to the place of where Rafiki is and tells him what he needs to know. And the next day after that is where Nala has to tell him that he's going back to reclaim his rightful place as king and really needs their help to accomplish that most actually agreed to, except Timon himself, who is still more selfish at this point, not understanding Hakuna Matata. And it actually goes back to the reason why he tried to intentionally sabotage Nala, because he's growing up and he needs that type of family he grew with because he can't be alone. Like, this is where he gets all left alone by himself to soak in the misery of his own personal desires and not realizing why he needed people with him, where Rafiki reappears in the scene once again without a single word uttered to make Timon realize what Hakuna Matata meant, that he finally learns the lesson to be there for his family as to what he was really seeking, what he actually wanted in his life, as he goes back and reunites to them to the point of the luau scene from the original. Now we go back to events of where Simba returns to face Scar, where he reunites with Uncle Max and Ma to help with the hyenas. That this consists of the part of where they were dragged out of the picture as Scar was fighting with Simba, where he falls into that final scene of his death coming into play, while Timon escapes the sacrifice to save the rest of them still alive and well. And then of course this leads us to the finale of the original version, where Simba hugged both of them, thanking them for what they did, raising them to the life he currently led, and making his own father proud, restoring the circle of life, and making Timon also realize the lesson of where home really was, while inviting the rest of the family to go back to the paradise of Hakuna Matata. And that's what I'm going with now to call that place, because that makes the most sense, where the film just ends with them and Simba living happily ever after to their heart's content, and then to pull back to make them talk in the theater to see the end and wanting to watch it over again as more as his family come in. Like, this is the greatest scene of the entire direct-to-DVD era, where all of the Lion King characters come in and actually turns into every other Disney character coming in, from Mickey Mouse to Stitch, before Pumbaa lets off a warning of not doing well in crowds, as you would know that it implies, where this film just loves to end on the comedic note of what kind of movie it was, where all in all, even though this film was simply an extension of what you knew and more, alongside the line of the comedic aspects of Timon and Pumbaa themselves, it was still a fantastic film that implemented the message of where you would belong really well. All around Hakuna Matata, not worrying about what the future holds with your family and friends, and learning to accept that with even going alongside your ambitions. That to me still, this remains to be the real masterpiece of The Lion King, going alongside the misadventures of one that inspires others to be great even though they don't know it quite yet. And that's all I can really say about The Lion King 1.5, the true masterpiece of all of Disney animation. I'm all done. Goodbye.